Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I'll never forget the day I bought my first luxury car. After years of working long hours and saving every extra penny, I finally had enough money to get the car of my dreams, a brand new fire engine red Ferrari. Driving it off the lot felt like a dream come true. I had worked so hard for this moment, and taking those leather seats for a spin was worth every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears. For the first few weeks, I babied that car more than most people babied their own children. I refused to let anyone else drive it or even eat inside it. I hand-washed it twice a week and kept it safely tucked away in my garage, careful to avoid any scrapes or scratches from other vehicles. That Ferrari was my pride and joy. One sunny Saturday morning, I decided to take my Ferrari out for a spin around town. As I pulled up to a stoplight, the flashy red paint job attracted the gaze of pedestrians walking along the sidewalk. I couldn't help but smile, knowing the car was getting the admiration it deserved. That's when I heard a faint tapping sound. I turned my head to see a kid, no older than 10, ogling my ride through the passenger window. He had his hands and face pressed up against the glass, staring wide-eyed at the leather interior. "Tyler!" a shrill voice called out. "Get away from that car right now!" An irritated-looking woman came marching over, grabbing the kid by his arm and yanking him back from my window. I assumed this must be the kid's mother, though her sunburnt face and oversized neon athletic wear made her look more like someone who had just come from a night out at the bars. "I'm so sorry about that," she huffed, clearly annoyed. "My son Tyler here saw your toy car and wanted a closer look." Toy car? Did this woman really think my $200,000 sports car was a child's plaything? I think you're mistaken," I said politely. "This isn't a toy, it's my actual vehicle." The woman let out an obnoxious laugh. "Very funny. Like someone your age could afford a nice car like this. It's obviously just a detailed model for kids to pretend with." I was stunned. Did this rude woman really think I was lying about owning an expensive luxury car? "I can assure you this is not a toy," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "I worked very hard to be able to buy this Ferrari." The woman narrowed her eyes, scrutinizing my face for any hint of deception. Well, it certainly looks real enough," she admitted begrudgingly. "My son loves flashy sports cars, so I'll tell you what. Let him sit in it for a few minutes and pretend to drive it, and I'll give you $40. How does that sound?" Now it was my turn to laugh in disbelief. This brazen woman wanted to pay me $40 so her snotty kid could play make-believe in my brand new Ferrari. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I won't be allowing anyone else to drive or even enter my vehicle," I stated firmly. "If you'll excuse me, the light is now green." I began accelerating forward only for the woman to abruptly step in front of my car, forcing me to brake hard. She marched over to my window with a deep scowl etched across her face. "Now you listen here," she snapped. "My son Tyler is a very well-behaved boy, and it would mean the world to him if he could sit in this car. Don't be so selfish." Blood was boiling in my veins now. How dare this entitled woman think she could tell me what to do with my own property? "For the last time, this is not a toy," I yelled in exasperation. "This is my personal vehicle that I worked hard for and paid good money to own. Now get out of my way before I call the cops and report you for aggressive harassment." The woman's face turned bright red. For a minute I thought she might actually back down, but instead she ripped open my car door and grabbed my keys from the ignition. "Enough with the attitude," she shouted. "Tyler is sitting in this car and that's final." She then grabbed her startled son and plopped him down in the driver's seat before I could react. That was the last straw for me. Still fuming, I whipped out my cell phone. "I'm dialing cop right now," I announced. "You have exactly 5 seconds to remove yourself and your son from my vehicle, or the police will do it for you." I held up my phone and began counting down loudly. 5, 4, 3, 2. The embarrassing scene I was making caught the attention of people passing by on the sidewalk. They stared, mouths agape at this woman trying to force her child into a stranger's car. "Let's go, Tyler," the woman whispered harshly, her cheeks burning red. She grabbed the boy and scurried away without another word, my keys still clutched in her fist. I waved my phone at her. "You can keep the keys as evidence for the cops," I called out. A few minutes later, a police car pulled up. I explained to the officers what had transpired and showed them my vehicle registration as proof of ownership. We've had previous complaints about a woman and her son harassing people around town, the officer told me with a sigh. It seems they have an obsession with fancy cars. The officers took down my statement and set off in search of the key-swiping woman. A short while later they returned, informing me that she had been arrested for attempted auto theft. Turns out she had an open warrant already for similar harassment incidents. We also recovered your keys, the officer said, handing the keyring back to me. He pointed down the block to where my assailant stood scowling, hands cuffed as her son whined next to a police cruiser. Even from a distance, I could tell she was still shouting expletives at me. Hopefully some jail time will stop her entitled behavior, I said, feeling a sense of relief. The officer agreed. She won't be bothering anyone for a while. I thanked the officers profusely before they took off with the deranged woman in tow. As I sat back down in my Ferrari, I couldn't help but laugh at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. I had worked so hard for this car, only to have some crazy lady assume it was a children's toy. I was just grateful the police were able to intervene before things got worse. Driving home, I made a mental note to get my windows tinted. That should stop future entitled Karens from catching a glimpse inside and getting delusional ideas. This Ferrari was my baby, and I had no plans on letting sticky kid fingers touch my beautiful leather seats. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Arrived at LAX bright and early for my flight to Tokyo. As a travel photographer, capturing the breathtaking cityscapes and cultural wonders of Japan had been on my bucket list for years. I could hardly contain my excitement as I made my way through the busy airport terminals, weaving between crowds of bleary-eyed travelers. After checking my bags, I decided to grab an overpriced airport coffee and people watch at my gate to kill some time. As I was waiting in line, a shrill voice cut through the mundane airport noises. "Ugh, hurry up! Muffy needs to go potty!" I turned to see a woman in oversized sunglasses tugging a small, fluffy white dog on a sparkly leash. Before anyone could react, the dog proceeded to squat down and relieve itself right there in the middle of the terminal floor. A few people gasped and muttered in disgust while others simply hurried past, avoiding the growing puddle on the floor. An airport janitor rushed over with a mop and bucket to clean up the mess. "Ma'am, you can't just let your dog go to the bathroom here," he said politely. "There are relief areas for pets by the entrance." The woman waved her hand dismissively without even making eye contact. "It's fine. They pay people to clean this stuff up." My jaw dropped in disbelief. Who was this rude, entitled woman letting her pampered pet create a biohazard at a busy airport and acting like it was no big deal? As I made my way to my gate, clutching my coffee, still fuming from that interaction, I noticed the same dog and owner walking ahead of me. Just my luck. I settled into a seat near the window and popped in my headphones, hoping I wouldn't have to interact with this incredibly inconsiderate woman again. A little while later, I heard that shrill voice pierce through my music. The woman was at the check-in counter complaining about missing out on an upgrade to first class. "Do you know who I am? I always fly first class to Tokyo. This is unacceptable," she bellowed at the agent. The poor attendant explained politely that first class was fully booked. The woman huffed, grabbed her ticket, and stormed off, little Muffy trotting behind her. As I watched her plop down in a seat in the economy section, an idea started forming in my head. I know revenge isn't always the answer, but the audacity and entitlement of this woman were really getting under my skin. I opened the airline's app on my phone and scrolled through the list of flight statuses, noticing one headed to Tokyo from gate 47B, the gate right next to ours. Hatching my plan, I walked over to the rude dog owner and tapped her on the shoulder. "Excuse me, I just heard them announce that this flight is delayed. They're moving anyone on the Tokyo flight to gate 47B. Incompetent fools," she grumbled, jumping up from her seat. "Come on, Muffy. Mommy needs to give these idiots a piece of her mind." I watched with quiet satisfaction as she stormed off without hesitation towards gate 47B, too self-absorbed to consider verifying my claims. Just then, the attendant began boarding our flight. As I handed over my ticket and settled into my seat, the feeling of sweet revenge quickly faded. What if she actually missed her flight because of my childish prank? Sure, her behavior was entitled and rude, but did that justify me potentially messing with her travel plans and leaving her stranded at the airport? As the plane raced down the tarmac and lifted off, a battle raged in my mind. She certainly deserved to learn some courtesy, but who was I to take justice into my own hands? As scenic views of LA faded into the distance, I decided when I landed in Tokyo I would find a way to get a message to her, perhaps through the airline, explaining what had happened and ensuring she could get home. Revenge may have been tempting in the moment, but I knew taking the high road was the only real path towards positive change. The next one is a petty revenge story. Yesterday I was walking up to my local grocery store and a lady power walks herself to the door. She acted like she didn't see me, which was impossible. She almost ran me over. Then she calls out to her daughter to hurry up. I stopped and let the daughter go in front of me. The deli area makes all sorts of yummy sandwiches to order. You just have to fill out a little card with your order and they will make it for you immediately, or while you finish grocery shopping. So I walk over to the deli and see a couple standing there. The deli lady is making their food. No worries. I'm not in a hurry. I walk over to the little counter and fill out my card and hand it to another lady who popped over to help. Now the same sheik who tried to run me over at the entrance is standing in front of the deli windows looking at the meats and cheeses. She tells the ladies that she was there before me, and she didn't know about filling out the cards. This, of course, is 100% not the truth, so I step up and say, "No, ma'am, I was here first." One lady starts making my sandwich, and the sheik reiterates that she was there first and should be served before first. BTW, she still hasn't finished filling out her order card. Her daughter is staring straight at me, so I look in her eyes, staring back. I hold her gaze for several uncomfortable moments, and then I say hello. She stops staring and turns to her mother. Then Mom starts talking about how famished she is, so the deli ladies give her a piece of bread. Just because I could, since I had time, I added a few items to my sandwich. A little mayo, extra red onions. At this point, the deli lady is laughing at me because she knows what I'm doing. At the end, I asked if it could be toasted on the panini press. The deli lady starts laughing out loud. I just smiled and looked at Mom and daughter. She was so angry, but there was really nothing she could do. I grabbed a blueberry muffin from the bakery and headed to check out. I can't lie. I was really hoping the mom and daughter would be in line. Alas, they were still at the deli counter waiting on sandwiches. I actually giggled to myself. I don't know why, but I had all kinds of time yesterday to be petty. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This was a year or two ago. The house I was living in has a garage but has been converted to a workshop, so I always had to park on the street. I got a letter from the council to say they were going to be doing road resurfacing for all the streets in the area, and all cars had to be off the road so that they could replace all the bitumen. The problem was that they didn't say what streets, or in what order that they were doing them in. So me trying to be considerate, I moved my car off the road and parked in my old driveway between the road and the footpath. I made sure I was not blocking the footpath or on the grass nature strip. The very next day, I noticed a parking ticket on my car. The reason printed on the fine was vague mentioning obstruction of access, so I rang the council. The conversation went as follows. Me: "Hi, I received a parking fine that I don't think is valid. Can I get some more information about the road rule violation so that I can contest it and have it canceled?" Councilperson: "Your car was in the way. It should have been parked on the road." Me: "I moved it off the street as per your request to clear the road, and I only parked it in my driveway so that it wasn't on the bitumen, as you hadn't given any indication on which roads were going to be resurfaced." Councilperson: "Then it should have been on a different road." Me: "Which one? I don't want to be in the way while you are resurfacing." Council: "Are you dumb? If we are working on your street, maybe you could park on Smith Street." So that's exactly what I did. Apparently, that's also what the 3 other people did who also got tickets. Now, Smith Street has 3 patches of old bitumen where their council workers had to carefully resurface around the cars that were parked exactly where we were told. The next one is an entitled people story. As Karen stories go, this isn't exactly a barn burner, but here goes. Since tickets for Oppenheimer were incredibly hard to get in my area for some reason, I ended up having to see this movie by myself at 9:30 p.m. on Saturday night. Not incredibly convenient for me, but I really wanted to see it. And at least at that hour there won't be too many kids. So I show up, grab some Skittles and a soda, and go sit down. A few minutes into the previews, Karen shows up, walks to what is apparently her seat, decides she doesn't like that one, and walks back to my aisle and starts idioting at the person sitting about 3 seats to my left that she should have that seat. This is one of those theaters with the snazzy reclining seats and enough room that people don't have to stand up to let you through. The person to my right starts filming her, and I sit up to watch. She's on a tear about how this guy needs to give her the premium seat that he reserved in advance. He needs to respect his elders. He needs to show respect to women. He needs to stop using cancel culture on her just because she's white. It should be noted that he was too. He needs to stop being a lazy, entitled millennial. The reason she gave that this guy needs to give up his seat? She had to go through atom bomb drills in elementary school, so she deserves to have a good view for this movie. I grab my phone and call the theater. The person on the other end of the line can hear her, says, "Let me guess, Theater 4? Security will be there in a second, you're our 5th call." They show up, escort her out of the theater, and the rest of us watch the movie in peace. The next one is an entitled parents story. Update for the previous video, last story. Wow. I'm a little overwhelmed with how fast this post exploded yesterday. I was definitely not expecting that. I tried to keep up with as many comments and replies as possible, but I figured this might be an easier way to answer the questions that have been thrown at me. But first off, I definitely understand those who are skeptical about my post. It's more than a little bizarre, and I'm probably not the best at describing some of the situations. But I seriously appreciate all the great advice that has been given, and I'm looking at some of the other options listed in the comments as well as what I am already doing. I think the easiest part for me to clear up is the questions about the insurance and my EM getting me off of the insurance I had with my boyfriend and putting me on the state insurance without my or my boyfriend's consent. As an adult, I can call in and cancel my coverage at any time, with or without the policyholder's knowledge. There doesn't need to be a major life change in order to be taken off of a policy, usually just to get new insurance coverage or add someone to insurance. All my EM needed was the insurance information and access to my information as well as his, which she did. She already had all of my personal information, including my SS number and my insurance information. This is how she signed me up for insurance coverage through the state as well. As some of you speculated, I'm sure it had something to do with the financial control she could exert over me, as well as trying to totally get my boyfriend out of my life. But honestly, I will probably never get the real answers to that. The reason why I didn't get the hospital bills immediately is a pretty easy explanation. First off, my car insurance coverage included medical bill payments as well, up to a certain amount of money. At first, going through the billing process, the hospital, orthopedics, anesthesiologists, ECT, had to send their bills through my car insurance first, and then through my health insurance. I'm not 100% sure how that all works exactly, but I do know it was a mess and it took multiple tries to explain to all the doctors what was already paid out, who got what money, and the next insurance to the bill. As well as it took weeks for them and myself to realize that while I was in the hospital, the insurance I went in with got canceled mid-hospital stay. So bills got sent out to the insurance I had to my boyfriend, which was followed by confusion from the hospital, insurance companies, and myself, trying to figure out when it got cut off, what was covered, and what exactly happened. This takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. My EM did tell me eventually what she had done with my insurance and how she changed it, but by that point, it was too late, and I was scrambling to try and rectify the situation and get as much covered from my hospital stay as possible. Even doing that, I still owe nearly $50,000 in medical bills. For those who had questions about how I had gotten on his insurance in the first place when he started the job, he had the insurance from which we had qualified as domestic partners because of how long we had been living together and how long the relationship had lasted. For everyone wondering if we went to the cops or are filing charges or anything along those lines, it's a very long story, but yes, we are. I have a very good lawyer who actually represents myself and my boyfriend. It took me a while after I got home to my apartment to get to the point where I cut contact with EM. When I finally got home, I tried to start seeing my boyfriend again, and we started the long process of trying to heal from what happened since EM had essentially kicked him and his 2 kids out of my apartment. In the middle of winter, they really had nowhere else to go. The kids ended up staying with friends for a while, and he stayed in his car and rented a hotel room when possible. I wasn't fully aware of what exactly was going on at the time, as EM had my cell phone and access to my phone, and while I was at her home, she watched like a hawk to make sure that I wasn't contacting him. If I did, I got berated, screamed at, and at one point did not have access to my phone, which was all very confusing because I was on very heavy-duty pain medication, as well as having the confusion from the TBI. After I had made it back to my apartment and started to have more contact with my boyfriend, my EM escalated, staying at my apartment even though I told her I was fine, showing up randomly, and eventually getting so angry that I refused to cut contact with my boyfriend that she threatened to kill him. That was when I grew a slight backbone and decided that it just wasn't going to get better. At that point, I filed for a protection as well as my boyfriend, who copied my paperwork. When the first protection orders got dropped because we didn't have enough evidence, she had gotten a lawyer at this point, but we did not because we couldn't pay for a retainer. And this was before I had gotten smart enough to install cameras and a call recorder on my phone. My EM went to the city's prosecutor's office and told them that she wanted to press charges of perjury against my boyfriend. This is where the friendship with the prosecutor started, and it was very hard for us to get anything to stick because EM was getting in with our local PD and the prosecutor. Yes, they ended up going after my boyfriend and not me. Yes, that is selective prosecution. Yes, it is very illegal. At the same time, my mother and father are retired and apparently have nothing better to do with themselves. They had been in contact with my boyfriend's ex-wife, and at the same time we were getting beaten down with the perjury case. They also helped my boyfriend's ex-wife start a custody battle for his children. They had been separated for some time, but the divorce had been stalled in court for several years at this point. They also filed in small claims court for lawyer and court fees after our first protection order was removed. My ex-husband had been allowing my daughter to see both of my parents still, which I did fight, and which has probably spurred the grandparents' rights visitation case that they filed during the same time. So we have been fighting one thing at a time and collecting all of the evidence that we can. All of the hospital paperwork, especially those that were forged, had to be requested from the hospital. The phone calls to the insurance company needed to be requested, and we needed our lawyer to get those. It wasn't something they were just going to give us, unfortunately. At this point, we have waded through almost all of the court filings my EM had thrown at us, and we are finishing gathering out evidence so we can counterattack at this point. At the time, our lawyer was telling us to be patient and gather as much as we could, as when we get through the thick of it, we can throw what we have into the system, but we needed and want to have enough to nail them to the wall. From here, there will be counter lawsuits both jointly between myself and my boyfriend and separate lawsuits, as well as submitting what we have for the identity theft. It's a very long process, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to get things moving. For those of you wondering if me and my boyfriend got back together and how that is going, yes, we did get back together. It didn't take long for me to start realizing what was happening when I wasn't being given the heavy narcotics, and my brain started the healing process from the TBI. It did take time for me to wade through everything that happened and try and recall memories. We did get back together, found a new place, and moved back in together with his 2 kids and my daughter. We've had some hard times, and of course we're both a little damaged from the whole process. But we both have counseling or doing well. I hope this helps explain and expand on the questions everyone has been asking in the comments. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.